Hello and welcome to the Pinstripe Post. My name is Ryan Sampson, but he is the star of the show, none other than Joel Sherman. Joel, how you doing today, man?
Good. Busy. You watching a lot of Olympics, Ryan? You like the Olympics?
I am not an Olympics fan. I gotta be honest with you. It's never really grasped like my attention or like my interest. It's just another event for me. How about you?
Yeah. Would you believe I've covered 4 Olympics? So
I would. I mean, you've been doing this for a long time, and I'm
yeah.
sure you've seen a
I
ton of
like
Olympics.
I like running and swimming. It feels like the most fair thing in the world. We're going to start here and end here, and whoever gets there first. Now, maybe I've read a bunch about Chinese doping, so maybe it's not the fairest thing in the world. I assume everybody's probably doing a little something, but I really love the running and the swimming.
Yeah, the Lyles win the other day was pretty fascinating, seeing how that photo finish worked out just by leaning forward a little bit more. He won that race, so that was pretty interesting. But yeah, I mean, the Olympics just never interested me. But what does interest me and why we always talk to you on Monday mornings.
You blew the transition. Is the race for the AL East going to be that close? Now to you, Ryan.
Oh, so you got me there. I mean, that's ultimately what we're talking about here, Joel, because the Yankees, since the last time we spoke, was after the trade deadline. They sweep the Phillies. They take 2 out of 3 against the Toronto Blue Jays. And now we're in this position of how do we read this team? And I want to start off with first pitch here. So for me, the two things I want to highlight from yesterday's game that I think could be a good launching point for us is the way the Blue Jays attacked Aaron Judge and this lineup this weekend by intentionally walking him 3 times yesterday. It hasn't been done since Bernie Williams. And also the fact of Gerrit Cole's start, after a 10-day rest of general body soreness, something I think both of us have never heard of before in baseball terms. He performed pretty well after the first couple innings. So those are 2 things I wanted to highlight. What do you want to start with right here? Judge in the offense or Gerrit Cole's performance?
I think the bigger story is, I think what's most important for them as a team going forward is that Cole's good. I think there'll be a penalty paid at some point for walking Judge. It will be up to Stanton, Wells, the others. I'll say this as I wonder if it's a way to talk about Cole a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think. What do you think? What you watched the game yesterday?
Yeah.
What do you think I think the 2 biggest plays in the game happened back to back yesterday.
I mean, I know the 6th inning where they do the double steal, that was pretty impressive, but I don't know if that's what you're referencing for me.
So I want to give some flowers here to Jazz Chisholm.
Okay.
Right? The Yankees are down 2-0, top of the 3rd. Vlad Guerrero Jr. leads off with a double. At that point, I think it's the 3rd or 4th extra base hit against Cole, who, regardless of the bottom line yesterday, I think he had 1 swing and miss in his last 62 pitches yesterday. So there's a runner on second, and he's not missing bats, and the ball's getting hit hard. And Guerrero tries to steal third base. And Chisholm makes a great athletic, daring play. He essentially, it's like a wide receiver coming over the middle and knowing he's going to get hit on a timing play with Austin Wells, because Chisholm is off the line. And he's got to beat Guerrero to the ball bag, catch the ball, find Guerrero. He's getting hit by Guerrero at the same time with the slide. That is a heck of a guts and athleticism. The next batter, he's pulled over into the hole again, hits a chopper to Chisholm's right. Chisholm's, who's not a normal third baseman, has got to go to his right, field the ball, and throw across his body to get the out. He essentially saves Cole at least a run in how many pitches in that inning. There's no way Cole goes as long as he did yesterday. It was only 5 1/3 or 5 2/3 as it was. And then he's also part of the double steal that allows them to score runs without a hit, 2 runs without a hit, which they're not traditionally able to do. I only want to highlight it for 2 reasons. I have real questions about Chisholm, right, when he came here. And I thought those were what Brian Kenny calls on MLB Now, baseball-y plays. I thought those were great baseball-y plays, but they were also athletic along with the double steal. And so much of this season, Ryan, we have been on this show talking about the other team, if it becomes where the Yankees don't get the ball over the fence or their pitchers don't dominate, they can't win because they're not good in the other things.
Right, now manufacturing runs.
Well, those are manufacturing runs. And also on defense, it's stealing runs. It's saving pitches. Like there's so much hidden stuff in baseball, and not exactly hidden, because if you're watching it, you could see it. But I thought Chisholm saved Cole pitches and the ability to kind of work through some early problems. And even when Cole was pitching quote unquote well, he wasn't pitching Cole well, missed the bat. Again, he finished with 4 strikeouts. I think 2 of them were looking. He was not getting, the last 2 were looking. I think I'm right. It's like one of the last 60, 61, 62 pitches is a swing and miss. So the ball is going to be in play. You need good defense. And I thought Chisholm brought an athleticism and a tenacity and a baseball-y ethic to the game yesterday that really helped Cole specifically and the Yankees in general. And you see, like, I think if they're going to compete against, somehow they end up in a playoff series against the Run Red Sox. Mm-hmm. They end up in a playoff series against the Orioles, who are young and athletic. They end up in a playoff series against Seattle, who can really pitch. And you might have to figure out how to create runs without the ball getting over the fence. I thought those 2 plays back to back could get lost because so much. I thought yesterday was I was so glad I was there because so many interesting things happened.
Yeah.
The intentional walks, LeMahieu getting a big hit, Mark Leiter Jr. coming in and pitching so well. There was a lot to report on, write on. By the way, Trent Grisham tanking a ball. Gleyber Torres getting a terrible read in the first inning and not scoring. So again, within the great, I just think the Yankees kind of have to kind of clean up certain things. But what Chisholm brings is another way to create on both sides of the ball, perhaps, that has severely been lacking. And it was, and I thought, especially the caught stealing, where he's throwing his body in front of Vlad Guerrero Jr., coming hard. I thought that was a hell of a play.
That's something I didn't even think about, Joel, when you think about Jazz Chisholm in those 2 plays, about Gerrit Cole, how he ultimately ended up, performing and pitching, like you said. And I guess that's something I don't recognize right at that moment, is like Cole could have had a much shorter outing if Jazz doesn't make those 2 plays. That's a great point.
Circled him on my score. I'm, scoring the game, and I circled this, like how many pitches Cole had at the moment. I'm watching the fact he's not getting swings and misses. I'm assuming if they don't create, think about the stolen bases they've allowed this year. The daring play gets them a caught stealing. And it's a timing play. It's again, the closest thing you're going to see is a wide receiver going over the middle and knowing he's going to get popped, because Wells is timing it to the back. And Chisholm has to come hard. Chisholm is not coming from 10 feet away. He's coming from further than that. Thought it was in the 3rd inning of what was a fascinating game that went 10 to the last swing. I'm not sure that the Yankees don't get blown out yesterday. And Cole certainly goes a lot shorter if Chisholm doesn't make the 2 plays. And I just thought this would be a forum. I wanted to talk about those 2 plays.
I'm happy you highlighted those 2 plays because I honestly, those weren't on for me marking, but like, I'm happy you brought them up, and then the other flip side, Joel, that we do want to talk about too, is the Aaron Judge 3, the intentional walks there. So I was going to make this a Radio Rational take, but I want to save the Gleyber Torres stuff for later. So I'm going to tease that, but I want to talk about the Aaron Judge getting intentionally walked. I feel like we've discussed this before of how not easy, but I guess it is kind of easy for other teams to attack this offense, right? I mean, you have the 2 guys that you need to work around, and that's Soto and Judge. The Blue Jays straight up said, and I've never seen this before, at least in my time, of 2 outs, nobody on, we're going to walk Judge. We're just not even going to try pitching to him. For you, what are you seeing right now? Is this going to be a blueprint now for how other teams are going to attack the Yankees lineup?
So I wrote about this in the Post today, and I sensed it because the walk you're talking about, where he's walked 2 outs, nobody on in the 2nd inning, was the first time that had happened in the first 2 innings of a game in 50 years. And the one 50 years ago was they were walking a catcher to get to a pitcher. It was so long ago. It was the Twins. It was an American League team the year before the DH went into use. So they went from a light hitting catcher who they said, but we'd still rather not face him because we could face the pitcher, and they walked a guy. So that's how long ago it was. And so that motivated me. I went and I talked to a lot of people. I'm going to write more about this for our Sports Plus if people would like to subscribe to that. I really think they should. There's a lot of extra stuff on it. But in the post today, I talked to Pete Walker, the pitching coach of the Blue Jays before the game. And I just said, tell me about it. And he essentially said to me, we ain't done. And don't think we're going to do it once. And once Judge singled in the game in his second at bat, they said, yeah, surrender. Because Pete Walker said something interesting to me. He said, and I think Brad Osmus said this to me, other people who I talked to yesterday, you can't just think of Judge as a power hitter. He's a great hitter. There's a lot of singles to right field. And Pete Walker said, we're having trouble dealing with him because if we make our pitch, it's a single to right field. And if we miss our pitch, it's 470 feet. And we'd rather not deal with it. And the reality is, Austin Wells has been, as you know, this show has been kind of an Austin Wells show where I've really liked the at-bats for about 2 months now. And I was kind of calling for more of them and maybe him to move into a more prominent position. But you're still 7 days a week, twice on Sunday, going to let Austin Wells bat and Stanton bat. And those guys have to create a level of punishment on some regular basis for this situation, because what we're also going to see is how many times, Soto's on base 43, 44% of the time. So if you walk Judge, you're putting 2 on base. One of the situations yesterday, and it was literally what I talked about with Pete Walker, Ryan. I said, if Soto doubles and he's on second base, everyone would just walk Judge. I said, so when someone's on first base, why don't you just walk Judge? And he said, you watch. And they did that. They did exactly what he had told me he was going to do before the game. It was the first time since Bernie Williams in 1999 that a Yankee was intentionally walked 3 times in a game. Only Jose Ramirez last week is the only other one in the last 3 years where a guy has been intentionally walked. And I just think that since about May 1st, Judge has been playing a different game. And it's very Barry Bonds-ish because he isn't seeing a hell of a lot of pitches to hit, and yet he's ready when there's a mistake, and he's doing incredible damage. Can I say one last thing about intentional walks?
Of course.
This is not an original idea of mine, but I thought about it at the game yesterday, which is, and again, that was a hell of a game. If that was a playoff game, people would remember it. There was so many good storylines in the game yesterday. But Ryan, I'm thinking about the family on a Sunday that came down from Albany to watch that game, if they're Yankee fans. And Aaron Judge gets intentionally walked 3 times. Now, this is, it's Russian roulette when you buy a ticket, right? You can buy a ticket to Broadway and the understudy could go on. You could buy a ticket to the NBA and your favorite player could be load managed out of the game, or load managed a Sunday in the middle of 20 games in 20 days, and Judge has done it. But our sport, if you're a little kid who's 12 years old, your dad's come down from Albany or out from the Jersey Shore or wherever they come from a long way, and you're wearing your 99 jersey, and Judge has intentionally walked 3 times in the game, it feels deflating in the way that you can't stop the ball from being snapped to Patrick Mahomes or passed to Stephen Curry if you're a fan of another sport. And I think the punishment for an intentional walk should be greater. Maybe an intentional walk, you should get 2 bases, and everyone on base should move up 2. So if you're on second, you score. If you're on third, you score. Or you can intentionally walk a singular player only once a game.
Yeah.
And then you have to, I know the pitchers are good enough to just miss. Then just miss. You might get a wild pitch. You might have a Kelly Leak Bad News Bear moment where he hits the ball anyway. You might have a wild pitch or something. I think I would just install every rule possible to make intentional walks more difficult, because I think it's strategy over drama and joy. And I think every time we rob drama and joy from the game, it hurts. And I think about, and by the way, take it away from the Yankees. You're a Dodger fan and it's done to Ohtani. You're a Red Sox fan and it's done to Devers. You're a Guardian fan and it's done to Ramirez. It just feels like, can you imagine if you went to a football game and they came with a way to stop the center snap to Mahomes? And it's bad enough you got to wait an hour for your favorite guy to bat over and over and over again. Now it's just and go. I wonder if we should create greater penalties for doing it.
And that's ultimately, it's something to think about with Judge and how they're going to attack him moving forward. I like the one intentional walk per game, probably because in a game that can be sometimes bereft of any action, you're taking out some of that action by just simply saying, like you said, he's going to first. Now let's move on to the next part of the game. So ultimately for you, Joel, and way you're looking at this, and you kind of hinted at a little bit for Stanton and Wells, is that too much pressure on those guys? Because I'm just thinking about that playoff series, right? Like the future playoff series and how teams are going to start. Like you said, they're going to look at Soto and Judge and they're going to be like, yep, Soto hit a double. All right, Judge, you're going to first. Soto walked, Judge, you're walking too. And now it comes to Stanton and Wells even more. And do you think they have the right guys to be able to perform in those spots?
Well, I think Wells has been real good. Is he a cleanup guy in year 2 of his career? He might be best positioned to do it as a lefty who has a little sock, who has a really good eye. So, one of the problems is if you walk Judge or you walk Judge and Soto's already on base. We had this yesterday where Wells took a good at bat and walked. And, he left it up to Stanton. And we know the reality with Stanton. There is black and there is white. And there is never gray. He's either really good and the ball, like he'll have a week and you just like it's having a second Judge in the lineup where the ball is coming off his bat and it's great. And then there's the other one who's not, he's going to have a long stretch with lots of strikeouts, lots of like balls on the ground, double play situations, especially in a walk.
Yeah.
If it's on the ground by Stanton, he hits it so hard and runs so slow that, it's going to be a double play. And so
I think that's what's interesting, Joel, too, about Stanton, though, in his recent like slump or whatever you want to call it right now. He's only got 2 strikeouts. He's 3 for his last 18, 1 extra base hit. So I wonder, is there something brewing there? Like, is he gonna pop, like you said?
I do think it's Stanton.
Okay.
And he does create a certain historic fear. And I'd run it for at least 100 plate appearances and see, because when he got hurt in June, he was going well. And he, it always feels like how long because he had so many lower body injuries. But I actually think even this version of him, I don't know if you've watched it, he's running better right now than he ran earlier in the season.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
So I would assume he has his legs. And I think if he has his legs, he's still a threat. But it doesn't matter the level of threat. Again, I talked to Pete Walker about this. He's like, great. He's a threat. Wells is a threat. I'll take my chances with a threat as opposed to Barry Bonds. And right now, Judge is Bonds to some degree. I mean, he's got 41 homers with 50 games left in the season. I actually think he's a better hitter this year than when he hit 62 homers. He's striking out less. I think he's hitting the ball consistently harder. He's accepting the base hit to right more. Even when he strikes out, the count's always 3-2. He's in great counts constantly. He's just a brilliant hitter. And Soto is a brilliant hitter. I mean, Soto's having a greater year as you can have, and the other guy has 150 more OPS points than him. And
it's crazy.
And so, if Wells is at a point where he has well over a 900 OPS for 5 weeks. There will be a lot of damage there if he's an 800 OPS guy. Because look, Judge and Soto and Bobby Witt and Henderson and Ohtani and Ramirez, like Devers, like there's 10 of these guys. The idea that any 2 would be on one team is amazing, right? The Yankees have 2 of them. And so now you want to be greedy and say, hey, where's the third guy to protect Judge? If Wells has an 800 OPS and Stanton's hitting a homer every 17, 18 plate appearances, there's going to be a lot of damage there.
Yes.
Like, can they do that? It won't be all the time because even Judge struck out with first and second yesterday, right? Like, there's no all the time. But their lineup does feel a lot longer because Wells is hit, Volpe's hit. They've gotten a little more out of Verdugo. They've gotten a little more out of Grisham. When Oswaldo Cabrera's played, he's been pretty good. Chisholm brought a little lightning, especially early on. And by the way, LeMahieu, a little bit, has woken up. Even the out he hit into yesterday where he hits a dart to third base, that was a good at bat. You know, sometimes you can't guide it. And so I think they're fine if Judge gets walked and they're this version with Stanton kind of getting his full swing legs back in it. I think teams will pay a price for doing this. And then it will be fascinating. You know, like AJ Hinch, for example, the Tigers manager, simply does not believe in intentionally walking people. Just won't do it. And so I think we're going to see philosophically, by the way, we had it yesterday, 10th inning, automatic runner on second. Vlad Guerrero, who's kind of the last big threat in that lineup, is up, and Mark Leiter went after him, which was interesting. I was wondering, are they going to walk him, try to set up a double play and or face the other guys? I do think when you play at home with the ghost runner, you don't want to put that other guy on because, like, you'll say Parr is the one runner at second. If that, like I'm trying to keep it to none or one. Once I put the runner on first base, I start to run other situations. As long as I keep Guerrero in the park, I'd rather go after him. And Leiter was I thought Leiter and Chisholm were the understated heroes of the game yesterday. That if you were looking for like best supporting actors, they were the best supporting actors.
Joel, you're starting to ruin my do up here. All right, so let's go to do up. I want to
ask you, man. You don't want to tell me what we're going. We can tell the audience. I don't get any heads up what we're talking about.
No. This is good. This is good. Yeah. All right, so do up. This is what I was going to ask you. If you were going to invest in specifically today, where the stock market's reacting, if you were to put the stock and the things that you've seen over the last week or so, and the couple of things that you've seen so far, these I wanted to list these out for you. Carlos Rodon, 3 straight. Pretty good outings for him considering where he was in the previous month and a half. Jazz Chisholm playing defensively at third base. You highlighted already what you were impressed with the back-to-back plays yesterday. I thought, even with the bobble, he still had strong throw. His arm looks good from third base. So you have Rodon, Jazz Chisholm, Anthony Volpe's recent power surge. He seems like he's found that swing and that part of his approach offensively. And then finally, Leiter, his strikeout potential, it's providing dividends already for this Yankees bullpen and yesterday's performance showing you there. So those 4 things, where are you putting the most stock in and what you've seen this past week?
All of it. The Yankees are playing for everything, Ryan. It's one of the reasons sometimes I get a little pissy at them when they get pissy at me. I mean, they have a right to get pissy at me, whatever. But I'm always like, well, you guys tell me you're playing for a championship. And then when I hold you to a championship standard, you get upset. Like, if you'd like me to hold you to the White Sox, you're doing great. But you're playing for it all. You're playing for it all. There's maybe 6 teams, and we know crazy shit happens in the playoffs, but there's probably like 5 or 6 teams we really think that if the world worked perfectly, it would be one of those 5 or 6 teams that will win a championship because they're going to show over 162 games that they're the best teams. And the Yankees are going to be one of those 6 teams, 5 or 6 teams. And they need to be held to a very high standard because they're going to play for everything in the postseason where every 90 feet and every run is going to count. And you just can't shit away 90 feet over and over again, as they often do. And so I think all of it, I keep wondering to myself, like I just talked to you about what really stood out to me in that game yesterday. And I want to begin this by saying analytics are an incredibly valuable part of the game, and I am not anti-analytics. I think the analytics folks who work for the Yankees had as much appreciation for those 2 defensive plays by Chisholm with full understanding of their implication to Cole's game as I just offered, just throwing it out there for shits and giggles too. But, or that any, like I'll tell you one that really, we'll save it for Gleyber because I think we want to talk about Gleyber later. And remind me to tell you the one where I think sometimes the point is missed. But I think it's all important. I think Rodon really needs to be pitching well while the Yankees hope that Cole is figuring it out. I think the fact that Chisholm has gotten off to a strong start has been very important. But let's cool our jets.
Okay.
Verdugo got off to a great start in every way. How he was playing, against some reputational stuff and the performance. So like, I never want to kind of like knight somebody after a week or kill somebody after a week. But the best thing I think about Chisholm, besides some of the other stuff, is there's the expression. You know what the expression "whistling in the graveyard" is?
No.
So when somebody is actually afraid walking through a graveyard, but wants to kind of convince you they're not, they whistle and act like it's not scaring them. And like a lot of times I've seen people come to New York, and it's really the Yankees more than the Mets, where they're like, "Oh, I love this. I'm not afraid." And you look at them and go, "You're terrified. You're whistling in the graveyard." Jazz Chisholm's not whistling in the graveyard. He likes playing baseball, and he likes playing baseball that matters. And that's kind of obvious after a week. Now, we'll see if other stuff comes out, but he is not whistling in the graveyard. And like, I think goal one, when you acquire somebody to play in New York, I think it's true for the Mets too, but it's especially true for the Yankees, is like, are they up for the fight? Are they up for everything that's involved here, including guys like me and you doing this? Because we're going to do this. And you got to be up for it. And it's tough. I think sometimes the players don't recognize that we actually appreciate how tough it is. But it is tough to do here. And some people are up for the fight, and some people are Kenny Rogers, Carl Pavano, Joey Gallo. They're just not up for the fight. And so I think that's good by Chisholm. I think Volpe, for those first 50-ish games of the season, was a legitimate third best player on the team. And now for the last 3 weeks has been legitimately the third best player on the team, not by default, but by how he's playing. And that's incredibly valuable because he's playing such an important position. And when he's right, he's a superb point guard. He's helping you in some way every day. Defense, stealing a base, running the bases hard, getting a runner over, being able to get the ball over the fence on occasion. And so when he's the legit third best player on the team, it goes up. So, I mean, I don't mean to cop out. I just don't know how they get to the Canyon of Heroes without it kind of like most of it, if not all of it, being part of their portfolio.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you've been saying ultimately, is these secondary players need to be not even just be average baseball players and make baseball plays and make those plays important. And Volpe has done that. I think Leiter, you're seeing the early returns already for him. Jazz Chisholm, just having an athletic third baseman, a guy who has some pop, and to your point, is a lightning rod for this team, it seems like it's provided a little bit of a spark here. And I think that's why ultimately someone like me and Tommy, we have a little bit more hope now. And maybe like, okay, I could see maybe this team's about to get out of this funk and they're about to start really winning a lot of games here down the stretch. And that's
I really still worry about the pitching.
And that's ultimately we're going to get to in Hoganalytics.
Especially the Cole thing.
Okay.
If you don't get a full version of Cole, can you get through? I mean, we saw yesterday when he didn't have swing and miss stuff. He has tenacity. He has as good a pitching brain as you're going to have in the sport. And I'll give him the ball in a big spot and believe that he'll give me a shot. Mm-hmm. But I think if you're the Yankees, a level of look, they need him to be CC Sabathia in 09, where when he takes the ball, it's win day. And then you hope some other combination of Hill, Rodon, Schmidt if he's healthy, Stroman if he gets his act together, Cortez if he gets his act together, that some other combination does it. And Ryan, if I just go back, and I always think it's unfair to compare things to the dynasty Yankees, but just because I covered it all, I know what it smells like and looks like and feels like. They had no doubt Hall of Fame players in Rivera and Jeter, and a great everyday player in Bernie Williams. But they were so metronomically consistent because Scott Brocious was an excellent player, and day in, day out, Tino Martinez was an excellent player, and Paul O'Neill was an excellent player, and Mike Stanton and Jeff Nelson and Romero Mendoza were excellent setup guys. And the starting pitching was like, it didn't really matter like where you were in a playoff series. It's like, oh, I'd give the ball to Cone. Oh, I'd give the ball to El Duque. Oh, I'd give the ball to Clemens. Oh, I'd give the ball to Wells. Oh, I'd give it to Jimmy Key. There was an excellence across the board, and that the floor was so, it's not just the ceiling was so high because Rivera and Jeter are historic players, but the floor was so high. They never put a player on the field who was anything but really good and knew how to play baseball. They were so good. Like Tino Martinez wasn't fast. Tino Martinez was a great base runner. Like you don't have to be fast to be a great base runner. So that's why I listen to some of the bullshit that gets thrown around. Like you could know when you should go first to third. And you should know when you can tag up and score. And you should know how many outs there are 100% of the time, etc. if you're a good base runner and a good baseball player.
And that kind of brings me
that
to
Yankee team didn't. That Yankee team was good enough to win all the time, and excellent that they didn't lose. You had to beat them. They didn't lose. They were just really good at everything. So if you won, they weren't helping you. You had to earn the win. We know from watching these Yankees for 4 months, they sometimes will help you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
I mean,
that's
we saw
what they. If you want, again, I know what a championship looks like up close. A bunch of them. And I watch it. I've gone to the World Series every year since 1989. I know what it looks like. The teams that ultimately win are the ones that win and then don't lose. They make you beat them.
Right. You don't make those mistakes. You don't make dumb baseball plays. You don't make outs.
And the Yankees are still in that bad place to me where it happens too much.
Well,
and they got to clean it up.
They
and
do.
Maybe they don't have the right players to clean it up or the right leadership to clean it up. I don't know. But I think it's hard to win when you lose.
Right.
When you're not beaten, when you lose.
I mean, that's ultimately, to your point, like a Grisham play, like that's a losing play. Like that's a play you catch the ball. Ball hits your glove, catch the ball, in center field in the 8th inning. But this brings me to the other thing that was highlighted this weekend that came out, how Aaron Boone handled the Gleyber Torres benching situation. So this is the Radio Rational take here. I thought that was one of Aaron Boone's biggest moments there in the spot. I mean, yes, he did an inning later, but he pulls Gleyber Torres after he dogs it on a ball he thinks hits out for a home run, ends up on first base, and then he tries making up for it on the following play, scoring from first to home. He ultimately gets thrown out at home plate. We see the conversation he has with Aaron Boone. Gleyber after the game says, "I understand why he pulled me. I understand the situation." I thought it was a great moment for Aaron Boone to be like, we handle it. And that's the situation. I mean, how are you reading it, Joel? I know that's a pretty big moment right there for someone that you've talked about. Gleyber Torres, just be an effing baseball player and don't make dumb plays. He has a laissez-faire style towards him. The way he plays makes a cool, casual Robbie Cano style. I don't know. What are you thinking, Joel?
Yeah, I didn't believe I would ever be the irrational in one of these conversations. But I thought it was all bullshit. And I don't want to. Here's the thing is, I never want to live in fantasy land.
Mm-hmm.
Never want to live in fantasy land. So if I'm living in fantasy land, when Aaron Boone, who's clearly uncomfortable, the press conference that night says, to try to explain it away, Gleyber Torres plays his ass off. No, he doesn't. If Gleyber Torres played his ass off, you wouldn't have just removed him from the game. Right? You didn't remove Anthony Volpe from a game when he had a brain lock and didn't run across home plate one time because Anthony Volpe does play hard. You wouldn't do it to Oswaldo Cabrera, who plays his ass off. Like, again, you don't have to be a star. Oswaldo Cabrera plays fucking hard when he plays, right? Like, please don't tell me that Gleyber's playing his ass off. I have all the respect in the world for Aaron Judge. When he does, Gleyber's learns his lesson. He won't do that again. Of course he will. He hasn't learned his lesson ever. This has been going on for 7 years. Why would this is actually going to, this is the one? Literally yesterday, he made a shit read while he was at second base in the first inning of the game. It's a tough read. Dalton Varsho's a very good center fielder. The last thing he wants to do is get doubled up after everything that's happened recently. But if he checked out where Varsho was before that play, to me, it was obvious that ball was going to land, and he should have scored from second base. Instead, they didn't score a run in the first inning. And it's, again, like the point I'm making about Cole and Jazz Chisholm. The Yankees lost that game the other day because Marcus Stroman pitched poorly, but also because the Yankees didn't allow Gausman to potentially get knocked out a lot earlier because Gleyber is on second. He scores if what happens next, and who knows, which is a Volpe double, right? More pitches for Gosman. Maybe more runs because he's pitching out of the stretch. Don't let the good starting pitcher get in a groove.
Yeah.
Maybe he's out of the game in the second or third inning. Maybe he's out of the game there. You know, and what I wanted to say to you before, where it's sometimes we get so caught up where, like, the analytics of it all, somebody that night put out, Gleyber Torres made his 5th out at home plate, which leads the league. Yeah, his analytics do fucking piddity. He's making the out at home plate because of what he did earlier in the thing. The game has context at all times. 90 feet really matters. Now, this is the comparison I kept thinking about, and I hope this could be appreciated. For about 100 years, we overrated batting average, and then the analytics folks came along and probably began to do the right thing and put batting average in its place, especially compared to on-base percentage. But it went too far, and we began to think, batting average, you could hit 190 as long as you got a 340. On-base percentage, yeah, except for when you need a fucking hit. Then you better be able to get a hit, right? And home runs are better than everything else. If you told me I could have a guy who could hit a home run or a guy who's going to run hard to first base, of course. But that doesn't mean running to first base hard, major league hard, which doesn't mean you have to be Brandon Nimmo and sprint it out and everything. But there's a standard way, 90%, 95%, you're not putting yourself at risk, but that if anything happens, you're safe. Or you could turn it into something else. That's just standard. Every 90 feet matters. You know when it really matters? October. Have you seen the games against the Astros where the Yankees get eliminated all the time? The Astros are great 90 feet at a time. They get Altuve's great at it. Bregman's great at it. You're losing that battle. The way your team is built, you're going to lose the stolen base battle. Right? You're going to have a negative 90 feet all the time that you don't get one and the other team does. You're going to have a negative double play situation because you don't turn them the way that the other team does and your guys hit hard ground balls. How many 90 feet do you want to keep giving away and think that you can make it from here to where you want to go? So the last thing I want to do is listening to bullshit from Fantasyland where Gleyber Torres works his ass off and plays his ass off and he's learned his lesson. Because I'll tell you one trip that's almost impossible. Fantasyland to the Canyon of Heroes. It's hard, that trip, right? And you have to get the fuck out of Fantasyland. And you have to say, how many times on this show did I say, Grisham is going to clank one in a big spot. You do the cool, you do the style over the substance. It won't be the last time. And by the way, that's a tough play. He feels Judge, who's the biggest guy in baseball, moving towards him. Maybe it's that, not the style over substance. But at some point, they have multiple style over substance players. And it's hard when I'm doing this to not claim to be the old man on the lawn. I want the game to be joyous.
Right.
I want players to express themselves. But it must be within the context of playing the game well and right. You know, what's my line all the time, Ryan, on this show? Once the ball clears the fence, if you want to crawl around the bases.
Yeah, you don't give a shit.
If you want to do the hokey pokey, you want to do whatever. Once the ball's over the fence, do whatever you want. The ball is not live. Express yourself. Throw the bat in the air.
But make sure the ball goes over the wall, though, like Gleyber didn't do.
The ball is over the wall when you do that. Like, if you're like, you want to have some style, I'm okay with it. The sport should be joyous for yourself and the fans. But you're doing something where outs and runs are counted, and you just can't give them away with style over substance. And I'll always go back to, and this is on Hal Steinbrenner, Brian Cashman, Aaron Boone, Aaron Judge, which is either you're fixing it or you're condoning it, right? And did Aaron Judge begin to fix it the other day? Maybe. Gleyber ran harder yesterday. Trent Grisham ran a little harder yesterday on ground balls when I was there. Is that going to be for 2 weeks and then mom and dad aren't looking again and we could start smoking in our bedroom again? I don't know. But I know the players who I watch, who I say can play on my team, and the ones I always feel can't. And the ones who can play on my team understand substance is the style. That's the most important side, is substance. And then everything else, if you'd like to have some flair with it, great. Great. I want you to personalize it. I want you to have fun. I want the fans to have fun watching you. But, you can't 360 dunk and miss it when it's 98-98 with a minute left. Like, you have to have context. What's the score? What's the moment, etc. And, I'm going to be repetitive. I'm sorry, Ryan. The Yankees are one of those teams, they're playing, like, I can't believe I'm the one that's kind of feels like it's saying it to them. They're playing for everything. For them, it almost feels like they're supposed to say now, hey, we think we can win a championship. That's why we put together this team in this way. It's like, it's rote. It's not just a thing. They are incredibly talented.
Right.
They might have the 2 best hitters in the world in one lineup. When Gerrit Cole is right, he's maybe the best pitcher in the world. I don't know if we'll get there. We've seen how talented Hill and Rodon can be when they're right. How talented Volpe and Chisholm could be when they're right. I mean, I'm up to 7 or 8 players who are incredibly talented players, and they have other good support guys, and they could be one of those teams that could run the table. And that has to be about more than talent. It also has to be about substance. And I think it was too late what Aaron Boone did. It's good that better late than never. Better late than never. I'm still not sure what took an hour in the game to do. If I was a conspiracy theorist, I'd be wondering, did he need clearance from upstairs, or did somebody from upstairs have to call down and tell him to do it? But that would only be if I was a conspiracy theorist, right?
Okay.
As opposed to what we got the next day. It took he didn't want to put Oswaldo Cabrera in cold. Oswaldo Cabrera gets put in cold all the time. He's a bench player.
It's a bullshit. It's a bullshit excuse.
I didn't want to put on make a bigger deal out of it. You took him out of the game from the top step of the dugout. You know how the television cameras work. You worked for ESPN. You've been the manager for the Yankees with the Yes cameras everywhere for 7 years. You know, the one Aaron Judge steps in front of all the time, right? Like, so whatever. Like, it all felt bullshitty. But he's in charge. Hal Steinbrenner, Brian Cashman, Aaron Boone, Aaron Judge. They're in charge of substance. And the Yankees need more of it. If, again, or not. Maybe they'll talent their way to it, or maybe it really doesn't matter to them as much as they say. It's more important to look good than to actually do the down and dirty it takes to be the last team standing.
I hear you, Joel, on the substance part. I just wonder if there's a bigger conversation just about the dynamic between Aaron Boone and managing this team, and a lot of fans have called Boone out because he's the player-friendly manager, right? Like he's their friend, right? Like he's their guy that's always going to have their back. And to your point, like when he says, Gleyber Torres plays his ass off, we know you're lying. You're not telling us the truth there. And yeah, he knows where the cameras are. He knows that was a little performative, it felt like, in that moment. But I still think there's something to be said, like you said, better late than never. Time to cut this shit out with Gleyber Torres. It's enough with the plays that we see that are so mind-numbing.
Can I ask you one with Gleyber? And Gleyber's hit the ball much better for about 3 weeks now. If LeMahieu's in the midst of having a second half like he had last year, would you put Chisholm at second and LeMahieu at third?
In a heartbeat. What has Gleyber done to prove to you this year that he's earned that spot?
I'm trying to remember the situation yesterday. I said it to Dan Martin, and I'm trying to think the other person. Molly Walker was there for us. I think I said it to a couple of different people, which was they went to have a meeting on the mound in a late game situation. And I did the ghost runner get to third base yesterday? I forget what the situation was. And they went out. Matt Blake went to talk to the guys. And I said, if I'm Matt Blake, and I'm not sure that Matt Blake didn't do this, I would turn to Gleyber Torres and say, oh, no, it was the ghost runner. He was on second base. And they went to have a conversation about one of the batters late in the inning. And I said, I would turn to Gleyber Torres and say, you understand, a ball can't get through the infield. Like, if you can't make the play obvious, if it's not an easy play, smother the fuck out of the ball. Do not let the ball get to the outfield. I don't want to see a side saddle. I don't want to see cool. Like, The runner on second beats us. The ball can't get to the outfield. Because I think at some point he's lost the right to believe that he understands how to play Major League Baseball on a high level and understands context and all the stuff. I would, in every situation, make sure he understands. If I were the third base coach yesterday and he was on second base, I'd be pointing to where Varsho is. I go, you got Varsho? You got where the right fielder is? You got where the left fielder is? You know, again, like people, there's like a cavalcade of shit that could be thrown on Alex Rodriguez. Alex Rodriguez is a great base runner. Like, knew who could take advantage of with runners and stuff like that. Derek Jeter, great base runner. But again, Tino Martinez, great base runner. You know, you don't have to be fast. Like, I would not assume. It's a cerebral
part of the game, though.
I would not assume a single thing with Gleyber Torres. And therefore, to me, that's the way to almost, if you're looking to, I don't want to use the word humiliate because he was humiliated the other night, but you're trying to send a hard message. The hard message would be, until I see you play consistently smart, I'm going to remind you in real time. Like if I'm Luis Rojas or I'm the first base coach, I'm going to be like, do you know where all the outfielders are? Do you know the strength of all the We went over it in the pregame meeting, but do you remember? Did you care in the pregame meeting? If not, I'm here again to tell you. Their judges up. Look how deep they're playing. Anything that bounces twice, you could get to third base. But good secondary lead. Got to get a good secondary lead, right? And then get back to first base quick because these teams will backpick you, especially you because they know you don't pay attention. I think you've got to. It's I wrote about this.
It's overmanaged and you have to coach the hell out of him. Like you have to make sure.
I wrote about this with Bill Parcells. Forgive it. Like when he was, I think, his first coaching job at Hastings College, he knew in a big game against their main rival, they were going to run a counter, throw the ball back across the field play. And they went over it like 10 times in practice, and I'm going to forget the player's name. So I'm going to say Ryan Sampson was the smartest player on his team and played middle linebacker. And he said, you know, don't get dragged. Stay with the guy who's cutting across the formation. The plays run, and they score a touchdown on it because the middle linebacker went. It was his smartest player. And he starts to yell at him, and his mentor is on the sideline and says, no, that's your fault. He said, what do you mean? I told him 10 times not to do it. He said, well, you should have told him 11. And that, like, in other words, if it doesn't resonate 10 times with Gleyber and you're still playing him because you want the bat, then it's okay on the field, whether it's Anthony Volpe or DJ LeMahieu or the pitching coach when he comes out or the first base coach or the third base coach, tell him an 11th time because it's bad secondary leads. It's bad not getting back to the base where he could get picked. I mean, he makes a lot of mistakes on the bases. It's bad infield play in key situations where it's like, man, it's 3-3 at Fenway Park in the 8th inning. The ball can't get to the outfield with a runner on second. You understand that? Like we're playing base. Like see the big scoreboard? It's got a score on it. Like if they get one more, they're going to win. We can't let them get one more. But I think that's leadership, or maybe Gleyber is incapable.
I was going to say, I think he might.
In which case, the leadership that has failed is Brian Cashman and others who have watched it and watched an extra year of him play shortstop and kept insisting, no, he's a shortstop. No, he ain't.
No, he isn't.
Are you actually paying attention? Like you're giving the guy who thinks worse and has bad lower body, like more responsibility and more range. I don't care what analytic you have that shows he has range. He doesn't. What are we doing here? Like, what are you doing? Again, I don't want to live in fantasy land. If I were in charge, I would know the toughest way to get to the Canyon of Heroes is to start in fantasy land. Like, you got to face reality. Who are we? What are we good at? What are we bad at? Let's keep accentuating the good, and let's make the bad as better. Like, if you're running a sports department, like you got your good people, but part of your job is what's your floor?
Yeah.
Let's make sure that the guy who we think, hey, he's not doing a great job. How can we make him do the job 10% better? It might not be perfect, but 10% better is 10% better. That's in every walk of life.
Yeah, absolutely. I just for Gleyber, it feels like a guy that maybe his entire life, has been always the most talented player in the field, and he grew up with this great prospect and was touted all about it. And talent, like you said, it gets you to a certain point, but then they have to play baseball.
He's not more talented than Juan Soto, and Juan Soto plays the game smart.
Goddamn right he does. All right, so real quick about Gleyber, I want to bring in Tommy Hogan from Hoganalytics because Tommy has a little bit of a conspiracy theory I want to say about Gleyber Torres, and I want him to throw it at you, Joel. Let's bring in Tommy. What's up, Tommy?
I have held the water long enough to do a spit take.
I know. You're setting me up here, Ryan, for failure. But, Joel, I was interested in the timing because my first reaction to Gleyber being pulled was there's been more egregious mistakes that he's made that has felt like it could have been pulled earlier. Like there's been other things. So I was surprised by that. My question is, do you think since this was probably the first real mistake after the trade deadline, do you think that has something to do with it now that they know?
I don't think it was the first real mistake after the trade deadline.
Sure.
He made a bunch of mistakes at Fenway Park.
But my point is, do you think that since it's after the trade deadline and they know this guy is part of the run for what's hoping to be a championship run, that they now have to prove the point? Whereas if they did it before the trade deadline, it lowers his value.
But he made plenty of mistakes in Fenway Park.
What's that?
But he made plenty of mistakes in Fenway Park after the trade deadline.
I get it, but there's fielding mistakes.
No. He made bad baseball think it out plays in Fenway Park.
So the trade deadline had nothing to do with it. Whereas if you bench him before the trade deadline, it accentuates this guy is kind of.
I still don't know what happened the other night. But why don't I pretend that I believe the Warren Commission, which is Boone here. You know what the Warren Commission is, Tommy?
I believe so.
Okay, so I'm going to believe the Warren Commission. That's the people who said Oswald did it in the Kennedy assassination. That he didn't pull, that it was all his idea. But he didn't want to make theatrics out of it, and he wanted Oswaldo Cabrera to be ready, though neither of those.
He got the last out on the base pass and was out in the field. I think that was also the what they said, too.
Right.
He never came back into the dugout because he made the last out on the base pass.
All right, so I'm gonna believe it. I'm going to believe the cover story because usually conspiracies are tough, whatever. I believe it. I just think at some point, if you're going to do it, instead of more conspiracy theories, it's after the trade deadline or whatever. It's just like at some point, the straw breaks the camel's back. And it was so and I don't think he takes him out of the game if he doesn't get thrown out at the plate. I think that accentuated it. And I really did want to run into Luis Rojas yesterday, and I didn't see him because I was working on all this Judge pregame stuff yesterday that I wanted to get, and I'm glad I did actually. But I did want to ask Luis Rojas if human nature had taken over in that spot where he was so frustrated he wasn't on second base that he decided, I'm going to try to score him because we should have this run, right? Like if I'm Luis Rojas, I'm thinking like that guy, we need this run because this guy already messed up the run. And I think human nature took over. I think if Gleyber scores, I don't think he gets taken out of the game. So therefore, that's why I don't believe your theory. I think those two things became I got to make a statement.
Sure.
I got to make a statement because I also think he's not the only guy on the team who's doing stuff that maybe I'm giving Boone too much credit here, but he's a third generation baseball man. His grandfather played in the major leagues. His father played and managed and still works in the front office in the major leagues. His brother played in the major leagues. I've got to believe his baseball soul resonates with the right way to play. And I think he has to see a bunch of stuff regularly that. And again, I don't know what to make of it because, like, even that night, he was like talked about where it's overstated, where like some of this stuff. And I get it. Again, if you're telling me the difference between running hard to first base and a home run, yeah, in an analytical world, I want the home run. But this isn't asking for $1 million and the lease to Tahiti. You can have both things, like, and really. The second one takes no talent. It just takes mentality and desire to be good at it.
It came on his hardest hit ball of the season, too. So, like, he had this huge...
And also, what was that thing that night where they're saying, like, we don't know if he makes it second? he didn't hit it off the right field wall at Yankee Stadium. He hit it to Death Valley.
Right.
Like,
right. It was, yeah.
I'm 60.
Yeah.
If I'm running, I coast into second base.
Right. He's on second base.
Okay, like, what are we talking about here? Like,
right.
Let's stop making cover stories for people doing bad things.
Yep.
If I could ask you another
Be at the
question.
left field wall at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, that's a double. If I could ask you another question, Joel, before I get into some pitching struggles, I was interested in you guys' Aaron Judge conversation, and it reminded me of I know the lineup looked a lot different in the Subway Series, but Eduardo Perez kept saying, I would hit Aaron Judge leadoff because they walked him nonstop, and he brought up Shohei Ohtani. He's hitting leadoff now with the Dodgers since Betts. Would that help? And like I said, the lineup looks a lot different now, but would that help make these teams pitch more to him if he hit leadoff?
I mean, maybe the first time, but I don't know. I think, again, I want to use the best tactical advantages I can. Sometimes that thing that looks and feels right, like when you're hitting Jahmai Jones first and J.D. Davis fourth, two guys who have been taken off your roster since then. Like, I actually understand what Boone was doing. He was looking for some righty-lefty thing early, and he knew neither guy would play the whole game in a close game, and he would be able to get his lefty hitters into the game in an advantageous situation later in the game. But some things look so bad, like leading off Luke Voigt. Like, some of them, like you're playing Major League Baseball. I realize that, like,
high on base, but it's still.
I get it. But like, you're doing something very public, and I mean, Kyle Schwarber leads off. I get it, and Ohtani leads off, and I'm not dismissing it. I just feel like Soto second and Judge third. If you just have a guy with a 320 on base percentage leading off, 320,
which they're having trouble finding.
Correct. Right. Yeah. But 320.
Yeah.
Your advantages are so great because now you have the guy on base a third of the time in front of these two monsters who get on base 45% of the time. I would still take a shot at it doing it that way. I'm not dismissing it though. It's not, it's a thing. It wouldn't be my thing.
Fair enough. So going into some of the pitching struggles, you mentioned you're a little concerned. You have your eye on Gerrit Cole. A guy that really has hit a wall lately is Marcus Stroman. And it was something that we heard when the Yankees signed him. He hit a wall last year with the Cubs. He had a great first half, made the All-Star team, but hit a wall. And we're starting to see that wall again. And I wanted to look at the timing of it. So in his last 6 starts, going back to June 28th, he's only been able to get into the 6th inning in one of those starts. He's a 7.56 ERA in that stretch with a 3.55 batting average against. Both of those are the highest in the American League with among starting pitchers, minimum 20 innings. I'm excluding James Paxton, who would lead that, but has only made one start with Boston. His first 16 starts of the season, however, and that was through June 22nd, he made it into the 6th inning in 12 of 16 of them with a 3.15 ERA and a 2.28 batting average against. So I looked at last season, and the wall that he hit last season, it came at the same exact point. It was 16 starts through the season, the same exact date pretty much. It was through June 20th, went into the 6th inning in 14 of 16 of his starts with a 2.28 ERA, a 191 batting average against. Last 7 starts, June 25th of the season, before going on the IL. I know he had a hip injury, which is what people were pointing to for that wall. But, Joel, the fact that now that it's happened, or he had a 9 ERA in those last 7 starts, 3.18 batting average against, the fact that it's happened again at the same exact time, they've got Marcus Stroman for another year. Is this something that they're going to have to monitor and kind of maybe you see a CC Sabathia IL stint in the middle of the season to kind of break it up? Is this something that they're going to have to take care of next season to try to avoid it?
Yeah, I think, to stand next to Marcus Stroman is to know that he is not a big physical guy. But I stood next to Tim Hudson. I stood next to Roy Oswalt. David Cohn isn't a big physical guy. I mean, bigger than Marcus, but not like how you think of as like Gerrit Cole, 6'5", strapping shoulders, big, quads, big butt, like the kind of power pitcher you're used to seeing. So I know smaller right-hander Hudson, Oswald Cone, Pedro Martinez can make it through a season, but he is. I at this point, it's happening back-to-back years. He's in his 30s now. I think it's. I do wonder if he's out of gas, and it isn't just like, oh, I'm making mechanical mistakes and I could go in the laboratory and fix it. And so I'm keeping, if I'm the Yankees, I'm doing this about the whole rotation's health, and that Clark Schmidt comes back some point. And even if you need it, I thought Will Warren held it together when he didn't have to. Like he could have fell apart in Philadelphia after giving up the 3-run homer to Austin Hayes, and he held it together. And so, you're playing for it all. Feelings have to go out the window. This feels like the theme to the show, which is sometimes you have to do the tough thing. It's gravy in a lot of places. It ain't gravy here. It's not just about winning 94 and getting in. It's about winning the division, getting a bye, and then playing great for 3 rounds and peaking at that time of year. And it might be that Stroman is out of gas.
Yeah, it seemed like it's the same exact point as last year, which I thought was interesting. Joel, if I could leave you on one question. Were you in that press conference Friday night after?
No, I was not there.
When Aaron Boone starts shutting down questions about it,
I kept asking questions.
You would have?
Yeah.
Okay. I was interested to hear how you would have handled that.
Because my thing is always, I don't have subpoena power. You don't have to answer it. But you keep nothing over the last 35 years. All that's happened is I've gotten less access and less time. I used to sit in a manager's office and bullshit with managers before and after games, in which case, and there would be no, the thing that really changes everything is it's a press conference. So the thing that bothers me is not a potential conflict with the manager. It's understanding that if I have that fight with the manager, it's going to be like pretty much almost simultaneously go out public, and I'm going to have lots of problems with the public. Now, I still think I have to do my job the way I believe it needs to be done. And I thought there were a lot of questions left on the table that night. I don't think Aaron Boone came close to actually I still don't think he's come close to explaining what happened that night in full. And my job is, really for the fans, is to work as a conduit of he did it. You did it today. Why was this the straw that broke the camel's back? You waited about 45 minutes to do this. Did anybody upstairs tell you to do this, or did you have to get the blessing of anyone upstairs, or did anyone in your dugout, a veteran coach, Brad Ausmus, walk over to you and go, man, or judge, walk over to you and say, you got to pull him from the game? There was things left unsaid just because he doesn't get to shut it down. He's the manager of the Yankees. He's not my editor. And I wear a credential, and the credential has all these fucking rules on it. But one of the rules isn't Aaron Boone gets to tell me what questions I could ask, or anyone does. Don't have to answer it.
Would you have got more creative with how you asked it to try to?
I just would have. I'm telling you 2 things I would have asked for sure that I felt weren't asked that night, and I would have, if he had shut it down, I would have said, with all due respect, Aaron, I'm going to ask my questions.
Sure.
And I would have asked the questions. And by the way, I do respect Aaron Boone, and I do like Aaron Boone. And Aaron Boone has never been anything but helpful and kind to me. But there are times that it is an antagonistic relationship. It's just the nature of the beast. And the nature of the beast is nastier now because it's going to go out publicly so quickly. And, it's why when I'm about to get, I could feel the conflicts coming on with players now. I'll often say to the player, I'm not avoiding the fight with you. I'm willing to have it with you. Can we go someplace else? Because otherwise we're both going to end up on social media and we're both going to lose.
Sure.
And I'm going to lose more, right? People are going to more gravitate to the player they love than a reporter they don't know or hate or whatever. So I'd rather not do it publicly. I want to give a player who doesn't like something I've written or said a chance to have their say. I certainly made it public, and I want to be responsible. And I would always do that for Aaron Boone, who does have a difficult job. He has to do this publicly multiple times a day for a couple of 100 days. It's a very big responsibility and difficult job. But I'm not going to shit on my job because you got a tough job. And I thought the job was incomplete on Friday night. I thought there was more stuff to ask. And I think in some way you could say to Aaron Boone, I got a job too. I think there's more to ask. I got to write a story. I got a column. I got a deadline in 30 minutes. And I don't feel like I got all the information for your fan base. Those are the people that are going to read this, to write that well and informative. And I understand that you're walking that fine line between protecting feelings and, your clubhouse is watching this press conference in its room, seeing how you handle this. I get it. I have nothing but respect for how difficult it is. But I can't lose self-respect for my job while I have respect for yours. And so I'm a pro too. And as a pro, whatever questions I feel need to be asked. And if, by the way, if I thought I could get Aaron Boone off of the podium alone, which I don't believe I would have that night because it was so heated. I don't think, oftentimes he'll stop for me. He stopped for me yesterday after the morning one. I had a couple of Judge-related, I asked about before the game, you think they're going to walk Judge a lot and things like that. So I got him off the podium. That night, from my experience, I would have said, this is one I've got to do in public and it's going to be bad. But I think I have to do it.
Fair enough. I thought it was interesting that Joe Girardi happened to be on that broadcast that was the perfect guy to have on there. And there was a video, I don't think Yes Network aired, I think it was online, but he handled it when he benched Gene Segura. He had the same exact press conference as Aaron Boone. He answered like one question and then the rest of it was, that's all I've got. Like I won't. So it's something that it's not just Aaron Boone who handles it like that, I guess.
No. But this is the thing, because I think this is why they do press conferences, Tommy, which is everybody likes sausage, but you'd like it a lot less if you watched how sausage was made.
Right.
And like everybody likes the end result of journalism, but watching how journalism gets when it could get contentious makes people uneasy. So I wish those were not televised. If they were not televised, I think Aaron Boone would be more willing to talk more fully about it, and reporters would be more bold about what they ask. But they are televised because they're monetized, number one, but also because the people in charge of things have figured out how to cow reporters more and more. And it's very important that reporters, while appreciating that nobody wants to be bullied online or threatened online or made a fool online, you still have to do your job as best you can with as much respect, but respect includes self-respect. And that means you have to ask the questions that are right for the job, even if it's uncomfortable. And so that night, I would not have thought I could get Boone alone. And I would have asked a few more questions while appreciating why, especially maybe some younger reporters who wanted to ask those questions were probably afraid to.
All right. That's a good way of explaining it, Joel, how you would have handled that situation. Tommy, thank you so much as always for Hoganalytics, man.
Thanks, guys.
Joel, finishing us up real quick, because I think we've talked about it and hinted at it a little bit here. I wanted to ask you about for Joel's notebook, and I think you've kind of addressed this a little bit here, how you handle a manager in this situation. Do you remember in 2008 when Joe Girardi benched Robinson Cano and that situation? Were you around for that time when that happened? And if so, was there anything that stood out at that moment when he did ultimately bench one of his?
I don't remember. I mean, I remember the benching. I'm not sure if I was working that day, but I mean, I had nasty blowouts with Joe along the way. I mean, real nasty ones along the way. Again, I just think if we're both doing our jobs well, there'll be moments where we're in extreme conflict. It's just part of the nature of this, but social media and cameras that are ubiquitous have changed it. Mm-hmm. You know, because I know what used to happen is there'd be, when newspapers were dominant, which has happened during my career where they were dominant, then I stopped. There were 6 of them sitting in the middle of a clubhouse, and there were no hiding places in the clubhouse. The players walked, they picked up the New York Post, they sat at their locker, they read it, they went, now I'm in the ship with them, and now we're doing it. But because we knew each other a lot better, because they were in the clubhouse, I had more access and more time. I was an actual human being to them, and they were a human being to me. And we'd go at it, and then I think there was also always the appreciation. It's always important. I tell young reporters, you do something critical, got to ask beforehand about it and be there the next day in case anybody has a problem. Got to stand in the clubhouse. I'm here. If you got a problem, you want to wave me over, we'll deal with it. But that's part of the responsibility of what we do. We're calling players out in public. I think it's very easy on a lot of the stuff that's very popular these days without naming names or channels, where you can take endless pop shots at players and executives and leagues, etc., and never actually face the human beings that you're doing about. And you've got real muscles when you do that. Would you have the same muscles if you were standing in front of the player? I mean, I'm doing again, like, I don't want to make like John Wayne here. I'm clearly critical both in print and in all the places I do it. I also am in the clubhouses all the time and talking to these people and available if they have a problem. And I should be. I'm not infallible, Ryan. I make a lot of mistakes, and maybe I mischaracterize something. And if somebody would like to do that, I will do everything. And I agree. And by the way, I've agreed a lot. Like, I'm not, again, regardless of what it might come across, I don't think I'm an arrogant person. Like, I'm wrong a lot. I want to try to fix things if I make a mistake. So I try to be available, try to listen as much as possible, and I try to understand what I'm covering and who I'm covering, and also like have those two things, which is have humility, that it could be wrong. Like, baseball's hard. Like, it's hard to understand everything that happened. Like, Trent Grisham might have pulled up because a 6'7" guy is running hard at him, not because of something else, right? Like, that actually might have been part of it yesterday. It was part of it yesterday. I do like to try to keep learning. So I want to talk to people, want to be available. And I just think it's easy to sit in a studio, and it's popular these days to just do it. And the other thing's tougher and more miserable than ever because of social media. But it's the Godfather. This is the life we've chosen. It's my life. I'm too old. I'm not going to do something else now. This is the job. This is the job. It's how I think the job should be done. I try to tell young reporters that it's the way the job should be done. You know, I don't know if that answered your question, but like, and by the way, like Robbie Cano's a guy. I really like Robbie Cano. Well, I mean, like, Robbie Cano's a guy who failed at least two drug tests. He's a guy who loafed through a lot of mistakes, and I've been critical of it all. And if I saw Robbie Cano, I think we'd chit chat with each other because I think I was credible with him. He got on the phone with me this spring training. I'm trying to remember the reason. What was the story?
They played in Mexico, the Yankees, and they faced Robbie Cano.
No. I called him about somebody coming to one of the two New York. I forget what it was, but he got on. You know what I mean? It's like conflict and antagonism is part of it, but I have the utmost respect for the people I cover because I think what they do is extraordinarily difficult. Like, most people would wilt in front of 45,000 people and millions at home watching. The ability to actually perform in that situation is great. Most people would not handle tough questions immediately after a bad day as well as managers, GMs, players, coaches do. Like, Gleyber Torres stood out there and talked that next day. Like, our politicians don't do that. And they have a much more important job than playing second base for the Yankees. I have great respect for the players because of this. But it doesn't change about having self-respect and trying to do the job right and well. And sometimes that creates conflict, not because you want to have it create conflict, but because it's natural. If you're doing your job perfectly and I'm doing my job perfectly, it's not a mesh all the time. But it doesn't change that I start with respect until you would give me a reason not to respect you. And if I give you a reason not to respect me, you shouldn't respect me.
Right.
But in the old days, I feel like because we were around more, We have more access, and the players couldn't hide. I feel like, especially for the group of people, the reporters who are around all the time, there was greater understanding of the habit trail we were all running on. And it's not coming back. I miss it, but it's not coming back. So you just kind of like keep adapting to whatever the new realities are. But yeah, these are the realities.
They are the realities. And that's why, we're doing this. We get to talk to you about it, ask you these questions as fanatics, and, see whether it's critiques, successes, what you see, what you don't see, things that you can tell us that we don't see on the field or off the field, in the press, any of that. Those are the things that I think Tommy and I get to learn about. The fans that watch this show, they get to learn about. And hopefully they take that and understand, like, this is where you're coming from. This is where I'm coming from. And I hope that we can keep doing this and just keep having these kind of conversations and learning more about what you do on a day-to-day basis to covering this team that we love so much. And I appreciate it, as always, Joel, that you explain a lot and you tell us a lot about what you do on a day-to-day basis and how hard it can be and the grind. But also at the same time, this is why we love this team and why we love the sport and why we want to keep watching and digesting.
Yeah, I also keep in perspective, like, this job can be very tough and weary. My dad drove a truck for 47 years. I actually know what that looks like. I'll take this. I'll deal with a player being angry at me or a fan online threatening me or whatever. It's better than that. My dad, who's kind of my hero, taught me what hard work looks like. And so I'll take this grind over that grind.
Amen, Joel. We'll take you, as always. Every week we get to talk to you about Yankees baseball. Thank you so much, as always, Joel. Looking forward to it again with you next week, man.
All the best, Ryan.
Thank you.